Welcome back to this special live transmission of Pakistan TV regarding us to the major proceedings of the United Nations General Assembly 80th session, most notably Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's important address at that particular forum, and also that walkout during and before the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's speech. In the studio, we are honored to be joined by Mr. FARUKH. PITAFI is a senior analyst. Mr. PITAFI, thank you very much for being with us during this special live transmission. Now, as far as the collaboration between Pakistan and the United States of America is concerned, of course, a lot of engagements point to the fact that this particular relationship is not only warming up, but in fact strengthening, which has also been mentioned by Prime Minister himself, that under President Trump's leadership, this particular partnership is going to further strengthen. When it comes to India's export of state sponsorship of terrorism, as far as Pakistan's collaboration with the United States of America is concerned in the war on terror, or the situation during the 2 decades of war there, and also when you mentioned that Pakistan handed over that Abbey Gate attack mastermind to the United States of America, which was also acknowledged by President Trump in his joint Congress address. Now, could there be any sort of a collaboration in terms of intelligence sharing when it comes to India's nefarious designs of exporting state sponsorship of terrorism on foreign soils, or a common ground between Pakistan and the US?
Of course, why not? Remember one thing, you have to actually appreciate everything from President Trump's vantage point. He says that America's enemies might have done a lot of harm to America, but basically it is the allies who have been filching it for quite some time, right? For example, various alliances that were created, those alliances kept on asking America to pay up all the time. It goes for not only NATO, but so many other parties as well, including Quad or whatever was happening in South Asia or in Asian parts. So he says that if you want to actually work with us, pay up, especially if you are saying that you are doing something for us, and then your own security is also dependent on that, then work with us, and then you have to pay up. NATO countries have started paying up, but India and other countries still continue to actually expect that America is going to do everything for them, right? Unfortunately, India and Israel are two very clear examples of countries actually mimicking their oppressors. For example, Israel, there are umpteen countries that have learned from the worst experience and have actually vowed not to repeat the same mistake. One great example is China, the other one is America. One was actually subjected to century of humiliation, and it vowed not to repeat the oppressors or invaders' attitude. It has never invaded. It doesn't believe in that kind of expansionism, right? On the other side, America was actually ruled by a colonial government, and then they overthrew the yoke of that colonialism. And since then, they have actually built a robust democracy which does not actually essentially believe in becoming an occupying power for long. That's why every war that they actually went for, in the end they had to conclude, because there was hardly any belief or support by the people for a long-term colonial enterprise. So these are two good examples. There are two very bad examples. One is Israel. They were subjected to horrors like Holocaust, and then what they are doing today in Gaza is nothing short of Holocaust. Similarly, India was repeatedly invaded and colonized, and now it believes in colonizing everywhere. They seem to be trying to colonize America, but to talk about any place else. So with that kind of state of mental ailment in India, by the way, speaking of earlier, I mentioned that Netanyahu going to the UN is like a rapist actually visiting you when you are actually in hospital. Similarly, here in India's case, do you know there's a company called East India Company, and who owns that company? Do you know this? It is an Indian who now owns that company. Why would you revive the name of something that has done terrible hostilities to you, right? So India is a negative force, And that's why every country that you want to actually work with will work with you in intelligence sharing cooperation to find out what kind of damage India is doing to their.
Right. Very important point made. We are honored to be joined by another participant, Mr. G.R. Baloch. He's a former ambassador. Mr. Baloch, thank you very much for being with us during this special live
Thank you.
transmission. We really appreciate that. Very quickly, what do you think are the key takeaways from today's address by Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif?
Yeah, I think it was very broad. It touched upon the entire range of issues that matter to Pakistan, to the world, and to the region. It is important to say this because this, I'm sure our audience are pretty informed, but just to refresh their memory, that the annual, now it's become an annual ritual of the summit or the General Assembly summit of the UN. But it's very important because it's a conclave under which the entire globe, the entire world comes under one roof. And what happens is that each representative representing its own people essentially represents the people that he represents, and then articulates on the policies they are following as a country, as a state, their stance on major issues that the international community faces at the international level, at the regional level. And then the other audience, they gauge where that country stands on issues which matters them most. So I think with this background, I will try to just unwrap some. If we look at the priority in which the Prime Minister's speech was laid out, Gaza, Kashmir, terrorism, and climate change. Not necessarily that each one is immediate and urgent. No, that's not the issue. Issue is what is facing the world today. In Gaza, I think he elaborated with even narrating that horrible story which we will never forget. The history must not forget that small girl, like, who kept calling, was on live, and she was kind of killed with hundreds of bullets, while each one of us, and I'm sure those who were hitting her with those bullets, the Israeli murderers, would have heard her. So that girl's voice echoed in the hall of the General Assembly. So that should remain. That should also will become. I'm sure all of us know that each word spoken in those speeches is part of the history for the posterity. So we must not, so that the world must not forget that. So I think it was a great idea by the Prime Minister. Then obviously he did explain the situation in Kashmir, how India has, like Israel, has subjected the people of Kashmir, deprived them of their basic rights, how still the terror reigns, how still the might of the army of the Indian so-called democracy uses the force indiscriminately against children, women. And still, I think there are reports, which we don't even read it, of the rapes and tortures and torture cells, and in fact the disappearances, which is an abhorrent, in fact, abhorrent crime that is happening now, that any journalist writing anything, he just disappears, and then they find the dead body. And of course, the scourge of terrorism to which the country, our country, has suffered the most in the world. Over 60,000 people lost life of civilians, and scores and thousands of our. In fact, each day our valiant uniformed people are laying their lives, and even civilians are being killed. And of course, climate change. This is the second consecutive climate change induced flood in Pakistan, 2022 and 2025. since I also belong to a rural area and I have some schools that I try to look after. Everything we don't, even the world doesn't understand how in my these four schools, 800 children are not going to school for the last now like 2 months. Look at the losses. They lost the school, we lost the villages, we lost the roads. I mean, the whole entire life is disrupted. So I think he very well, he very well summarized all these important things. And of course, he did touch
Absolutely,
upon
Ambassador, sir.
what happened, Indian aggression, and of course on Indian
Absolutely,
aggression and our.
Ambassador Saab. I'm glad that actually you spoke about all these factors. I wanted you to actually comment on two very important things that were highlighted by your good self and the Prime Minister also. One is regarding Gaza, because we saw not only the moral leadership coming from Prime Minister's very pithy speech, but we also saw something very incredible happening where, France and Saudi Arabia also led the charge to highlight something very important and actually regarding a recognition of Palestine. Do you think that that is going to lead to something? And the second question is regarding, Indus Waters Treaty, because it was also highlighted at the UN. Do you think that there is going to be some follow-up on that as well?
I think the very fact of flagging these issues gives an impression of what Pakistan, how it prioritizes the issues. Commenting on the Gaza, I think Gaza, the entire history is being written. One history is being written through the blood by those people who are living in and enduring the genocide. And the ethnic cleansing by the terrorist regime in Tel Aviv. And there's another terrorist regime on our eastern border, which is, while Israel uses starvation as a weapon of war, potentially India doing the same by way of using water as a weapon of war. So essentially, when you use the water as a weapon of war, you that country is essentially depriving the population of their sources of sustenance. And according to the Geneva Convention and the UN Charter, depriving any other country of or a people of their sources of sustenance is a humanitarian crime, and if it is done as part of the war, it's a war crime. So essentially, in May, India, let me underscore, has been found guilty of both the crimes. It has threatened to stop the war. Even the wording in that provision is that use our threat to use the same as a weapon of war has been committed. It has committed, and actually, I wrote in one of my articles that there is a strong case for Pakistan to go to the ICC, take the International Court of Justice (ICC), or to the Security Council. But Pakistan, as we have been exhibiting, that we don't want to close all the doors. We want to remain confident. We want to remain restrained, and that is the key of our success in the Mark-i-Haq. And I think that's a very, very good counsel that our government is following. Although at the popular level, one sees the feeling of the people. That's why one reflects in one's writing. So, to be specific, I think the Palestinian question has entered a new phase after the recognition of 4 permanent members of the Security Council minus the one. The one holdout, I'm pretty sure, would not last longer. Maybe these 3 years of the present regime, which might seem to be under the influence of Israel, but the popular support for the Palestinian state, even within the US, and of course, what to talk of other countries which have succumbed to the popular pressure, I'm sure we'll see sooner than later that the entire world, that actually, as it is represented, the most powerful country, that is the Security Council, will endorse this. I'm putting a positive and a very optimistic prognosis, and acutely being cautious that it may not happen. But I think it's good for you and me to hope and give a hope to the world, because the world, the biggest problem that I see, Mr. Pitafi and Mr. Jawad, is that we, all of us at times, we feel short of words. My God, is it all blank? Sometimes we do come blank. It's because there's so much of despondency in the world. So I think Pakistan stands as a beacon of hope, as a beacon of peace, as a beacon of stability, and through strength and wisdom. And that is the two, these are two characteristics which really define today's dispensation in Pakistan. Thank you.
Right, Mr. Baloch, when we specifically talk about India putting the Indus Water Treaty in abeyance, the Prime Minister said unilateral and illegal attempt to hold the Indus Water Treaty in abeyance defies the provisions of the treaty itself as well as the norms of international law. You also mentioned that it is equivalent to that very aggression on the part of Israeli regime, which it is committing against innocent people in Gaza by using hunger and also not letting the humanitarian aid go inside the enclave of Gaza. It is India stopping Pakistan's water in order to inflict a damage to the resources of sustenance in Pakistan. Both of these things are equivalent. Now, when we go a little back in history, when India resorted to aggression towards Pakistan on the pretext of the Pahalgam incident, the National Security Committee categorically said that if India tries to do anything with the waters of Pakistan, it would be tantamount to war. Now, what makes me curious to understand is that India on one side, on the basis of a false flag operation, in which it didn't actually involve itself into a neutral and a transparent investigation on the offer of Pakistan, tries to breach Pakistan's sovereignty and territorial integrity on the pretext of a false thing. But here we have got the facts that India, in contravention of the international law, has put the Indus Water Treaty in abeyance, which is actually targeted to damage or inflict damage to the resources of sustenance for Pakistan. And when Pakistan's National Security Committee says that it is going to be considered as a tantamount to war, so why and how Pakistan can go about it when it comes to Pakistan claiming its due right?
And by the way, allow me to actually add
Please,
to
please,
this.
please.
Since we are talking about Indus Waters Treaty and we are talking about flooding and India, how it can use water as a weapon of war, are we, Ambassador Saab, in a position to define our red lines when it comes to the treaty violation regarding water? That if you violate this red line, then it is war and we are going to take some kinetic action.
Yeah, I think so. In fact, I had debuted somewhere. I was looking at it. There were 5 provisions that I found from various international treaties. It was the rights of the riparian, the lower riparians. It was the use of such threats of destruction of the sources of war. I think, oh my God, I am really reminded of. I always say that Islam has the oldest rules of the war. If you recall, at the time of the Fatah Makkah, there were 2 important things which were told not to be done by the troops, of Muslim troops. That is, not to damage the water sources and wells, the time of the wells, and second, any oasis where there were plants, not to damage. So this is as old as Islam itself. Today we are talking of the new treaties, but sure enough, if a life is threatened, the life of 250 million people is threatened. If India had the capacity and they really think they can do it, which probably they will not do it, but I think when they utter something, we have to take it seriously. And I had written another article too, I'm sure I shared with you, that we had to take his words of Modi uttered at the Red Fort seriously. I would take them on the face value. And he not only repeated what he said in 2019, that the blood and water cannot go together. Again, rhetoric. But rhetoric is not a replacement for a rational, law-based, legal-based, value-based policy, Mr. Modi. I think that is what has to sink into their heads. And I think the only way we can do is to have a strong deterrence. And what has happened recently in the shape, although we are discussing our Prime Minister's speech, but I think there is a linkage to that. The other thing, yes, the most important thing I want to tell you, because I had the privilege, I think you probably know, I was at the Pakistan mission in the UN as a counselor in 90s. So there's one thing more. You can gauge the status and the weight of a country, how it is received. Apart from the speeches, how many people are meeting them. That is how we used to assess that where that country stands. So look at Pakistan's stature, mashallah. The Prime Minister attended that very, very important meeting of the Arabs and Muslims among themselves. And then the US President met those 6 important Muslim leaders, and Pakistan was among one of those. It was to discuss how to do and resolve the issue of Gaza, how to make sure that there's a kind of enduring peace there and a sustainable peace overall in the Middle East. So in a way, we have become a factor again, a factor which has been now strengthened further by our agreement of strategic mutual defense agreement with Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which is again a matter of great pride, spiritual, political, and diplomatic.
Right.
But more than that, it creates, just 2 seconds, I'll just finish this thought,
Please go ahead.
that it actually brings up a new balance of power in 3 regions: West Asia, South Asia, and Central Asia. I'll stop it here, then we can proceed.
Right, Mr. Jia Baloch, it's always great to talk to you. Thank you very much for taking time out for Pakistan TV during this special transmission. We really appreciate that. On this particular proceeding with this very particular point, Pakistan's position as far as the entire equation which we see in the Middle Eastern region at this particular point in time, especially in the wake of what Israel had been doing since 7th of October 2023, then Israel's aggression against the state of Qatar, also that very signing of the mutual defense agreement between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia.
Pakistan,
and also Pakistan being one of those countries present in that particular summit hosted by President Donald Trump. Out of those 8 countries.
The one aspect that if you trace back Pakistan's diplomatic history and Pakistan's security pacts with various countries, you will see that Pakistan always was being, honed for playing a role in 2 or 3 regions. One region was, of course, South Asia, where Pakistan is a part of that region, right? The other one was, Gulf, particularly GCC areas. And that role, essentially, when you talk about CETO and CENTO, even then it was visualized that Pakistan will play a role there. Unfortunately, 2 things happened. One, 65's war, and then in 71, because Pakistan lost its territory, Pakistan, so to speak, lost its credentials also. That if you are defeated in a war, then how are you going to actually provide security in other regions? So this is one of my teachers, actually, Stephen Cohen, writes about this fact in his book, Defense of Pakistan. So that is one aspect. But then Pakistan has played a lot of role in a 3rd sector, that was Afghanistan and particularly Central Asia also. And because of that role in Afghan jihad and then in the war on terror, Pakistan has actually shown through its own, grit that Pakistan is able to best any kind of enemy. And now that when India attacked Pakistan, it was a refresher to the world that Pakistan has this capacity. Immediately what happens? Our image in the Arab countries immediately improves. And they start seeing Pakistan not essentially as a liability, but as a very trustworthy partner. And that you saw, again, if you're going to thank 2 people, you should be thanking Narendra Modi for gifting us that victory, and then also thanking Netanyahu, who actually went on rampage. First, it is, if you read history and if you read warfare's history, right? Chanakya or Kautilya, his Arthashastra, he actually talks about this strategy called rice bowl stratagem. That attack only outpost
the
first,
peripheries.
peripheries, and then work your way to the middle, and by that time they would have actually accepted their fate. So it started with Palestine, then we saw various regional countries like Lebanon, then it went for Iran, Yemen, and then all of a sudden, I don't know what actually happened to Netanyahu. He attacked a GCC country. Once that happened, and essentially not an ordinary GCC country, but a country with the largest American base in the region. And then
the one who was actually mediating the ceasefire talks.
Of course, and that's why he went there, because he is actually trying to distract people from accountability at home. He is found, responsible in 4 cases where he's answering of corruption and petty corruption, by the way, not a big one like billions or trillions of dollars. And secondly, what happened on October 7th, and why is it that instead of actually getting the hostages back, he prioritized a forever war because he wanted to deflect attention from domestic accountability. All those 3 things actually make it possible for him to go crazy. And he was actually hoping that in Iran, he is going to drag America into a forever war, and then he's just going to capitalize on that. Mercifully, President Trump is too smart for that man, and he just went for one targeted strike, and then he called it off and he declared ceasefire. At that time also, Trump actually went on record because Netanyahu was not stopping. And he, first time ever in history of American presidency, someone used an unfiltered word on air, right, regarding Israel, and that actually went on record too. So with that kind of state of affairs, we should be thanking Netanyahu also, because his craziness has also created a demand for Pakistan's dictator role. And I think that now we are going to convince all our brethren, our partners, that we are very reliable partners.
Right. We are honored to be joined by another participant, Honorable Mr. Major General Retired ZAHID Mehmood, Senior Analyst. General Mehmood, thank you very much for being with us on this particular transmission. Really appreciate that. How masterful a stroke this one was by Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif during his UNGA address, when he contextualized how India was given a bloody nose, at the same time saying that Pakistan is open to a composite, result-oriented dialogue and diplomacy to resolve all the outstanding issues.
Yes, thank you very much, Thami, for the invite, and my regards to PITAFI sir. Of course, this is a gesture of a statesman, to be very honest, who has shown his power, who has shown the defiance and the defense and the potential of his country, and still talking about the humanity. That's why I always maintain that the first thing which is needed to be done by the international community is to rehumane, countries like Israel and political terrorists like Netanyahu, and countries like Bharat and political terrorists like Modi. So Pakistani Prime Minister has, shown the character of the state, that there is a state which has the potential to win the war, which has the potential to counter any aggression, and which has a potential for the defiance of any kind of application against this country. So after that, once they have achieved the victory and the wonderful, excellent notion of victory which they have crafted after this Bunyan al-Marsoos, Operation Bunyan al-Marsoos, along with his military leader, he is present at a soil where humanity is being discussed, where peace is being discussed, where stability is being discussed, and nations are trying hard to protect the humanity. So in the company of so many leaders, so in the presence of so many leaders, I mean, the whole world is present over there. Their Pakistani Prime Minister has shown the gesture, which is a gesture of character and courage, and of course, that is the gesture of character of this nation. So that's a great gesture. It's a very powerful message. But unfortunately, whole world is prepared to pursue the peace, except these two countries. I think because of the domestic audience, because of the domestic pressures, and most importantly, because of their, expansionist designs and policies of Akhand Bharat and Greater Israel, probably they need friction. But on the other hand, they're creating enemies for their coming generations, and that enmity is now going to reside in the very blood of those innocent people who have lost their dear ones, who have lost their territory, who have lost their freedom, who have lost their sovereignty. So this is the kind of environment in which Pakistani Prime Minister has shown the real character of Pakistan, which is all about stability, which is all about progress, which is all about humanity.
Right, Mr. Pitafi, do you have
Yeah, regarding the Palestinian situation, I asked this question earlier as well, General Saab, regarding, what Prime Minister of Pakistan he actually showed his moral courage by flagging that issue again. But simultaneously, we know that two other countries that have shown incredible foresight and moral leadership, France and Saudi Arabia, in actually bringing together formal recognition of Palestinian state. Do you think that after 142 countries actually signed on that, proposal, and after that 157 countries seem to have actually agreed in principle to support the idea, do you think there is a way forward regarding two-state solution? And do you think that finally the US is also going to sign up on that?
Of course, it's a great foundation. This can't be much better than this. Yes, we understand that there are a lot of queries and there are a lot of questions, but at least there is a larger understanding. There is larger, an urgency is being found to create this Palestinian state for a which can lead toward the two-state solution. I'm sure the European nations must be regretting now once they decided to recognize the Israeli illegal state, because they thought that these two different ideologies can coexist. But yes, they can coexist if both are in pursuit of the peace and stability. Both have a faith in coexistence, which Israelis doesn't have. But anyways, I think United States of America, President Trump has already hinted once he was talking to the big leaders of Muslim community and Muslim countries. So he's already hinted that we have had a great discussion, and probably these countries have also recognized and appreciated the role being played by United States of America. And then who knows, Mr. Trump can, change posture anytime. But probably there is, I have a feeling, I have a gut feeling that now US have also have had enough, because this hate, because of the Israeli attitude and because of the Israelis military, these genocidal actions, the hate which is being created is mostly against the Americans. So everyone talks about Israel, but mostly people talk about the approach of United States of America for giving tacit approval to Israel, and it was encouraging Israel to go ahead with the genocidal actions. Unfortunately, it is evident from the speech of Netanyahu. He's spoken all about Hamas and all about terrorism, not a single word about the Palestinian people, who are innocent people who are being killed, and the way that they are being starved. So probably this is a great foundation. And once again, I say that I have a gut feeling that United States will also associate themselves, and they will try to, they have already given a positive statement on the West Bank's annexation. So they have rejected that this is not going to be acceptable. So he has the capacity to even dump his very dear ones. So this will be a kind of a seesaw battle, or maybe a lot of contestation between the deep lobbies, Israeli lobbies inside United States and the White House. So I hope for the peace, Trump wins if he has the objectives of
Absolutely,
establishing
General Saab.
peace in the world.
I'm glad that you highlighted President Trump's role as well, because in South Asia, especially Indian propagandists say Modi hai to mumkin hai. That is, if Modi is there, anything is possible. But I think that because President Trump has proven that he is capable of the art of the deal, and he is also art of the impossible. So as long as he is there, anything is possible. Essentially, when it comes to Israeli lobby, we have seen its power actually failing in various countries. But now, if you were to actually bargain this, I ask this because every leader more or less spoke about it. Gaza was at the center stage of all the speeches, including prime ministers. How do you actually bargain this? Because President Trump also yesterday speaking to President Erdogan actually hinted at a possible solution in coming days.
Yes, that is exactly my point in my previous discussion, was that it depends upon President Trump, that for how long he's going to support to attain the political objectives of a greater Israel. Because now President Trump must be feeling this pressure of this kind of the thinking which is being generated, and the thinking which is now really surrounding the Arab leaders, that they are apprehensive about the security guarantees by the United States of America. This Pakistani deal is kind of a hint. Although President Trump has not spoken much about this deal, I think he has a tacit approval to this deal as well, because and then this will put little pressure on President Trump also, that the security architecture which they were enjoying inside Middle East, probably that is being questioned. So one, and there are only two things which creates the coalitions and which creates supporting your friends, that is fear and your self-interest. So though there can be a fear in the United States of losing the connection with the security architecture of the Middle East, then there can be self-interest of United States that Middle Eastern countries or the Islamic world also provides a lot of leverage to Mr. President Trump as far as his objectives are concerned. So probably the self-interest of United States of America, and rather more self-interest of President Trump, may compel him to pull the strings, and may compel him to do this Gaza job as well. Because once if he's trying to get the Nobel Prize, and once he's portraying himself to be the peacemaker, because in his speech, I felt that President Trump was talking to President Trump, and the whole conflict resolution mechanism was being undermined. He was not talking about any other country nor any other organization. He was undermining, unfortunately, the United Nations as well. So he was trying to portray that I am the one. It's President Trump, Donald J. Trump, who can bring peace to the world. He can begin wars, he can stop wars, and he can stop any war for that matter, even Russian, Ukraine context,
General
Israeli,
Mahmood, if he
Palestinian,
thinks
and
he is
all
the
other
one
what
who
he's
can
talking again and again.
Who can bring peace to the world? What about the situation in Afghanistan? It was the US which waged the war in Afghanistan for 2 decades. And we saw that during President Trump's first term, the United States of America and the Afghan Taliban reached the Doha Pact. As per the Doha Pact, the international troops withdrawal happened, although in a very chaotic and a hasty way, which was criticized by President Trump himself. Now, Pakistan being praised for the counterterrorism efforts by President Trump himself. So when it comes to ensuring peace, stability, and a united Afghanistan, what sort of a role do you think President Trump can play in this regard, and also when it comes to alleviating Pakistan's genuine concerns regarding resurgence of terrorism emanating from Afghanistan soil?
I'm not sure that, brother, I have my apprehensions that if they will do something much more in Afghanistan for Pakistan, but they need to do a lot for themselves, because Afghanistan has become a place for a lot of terrorism is being emanated from Afghanistani soil. That even the United States of America is now once again being threatened by the terrorists who are operating from the soils of Afghanistan. even before our escalation with India, if you remember that we have handed over a very top
Exactly.
terrorist of ISIS to America. And General Kurela is very clearly in his briefing in the standing committee, in his hearing, he has very clearly appreciated Pakistan for the sport. So there was a lot of collaboration between America and Pakistan even before this situation, in the South Asia. So it means that they have concerns and a lot of fears from Afghanistan that this again these franchises, these terrorist groups, even to the whole world and including United States of America and West, so they can create a problem for that. That's why they want to cooperate with Pakistan. It is always the convergence of interest. I don't think so that they're doing it only for Pakistan or maybe being now again after this reset they are taking care of Pakistan. It is their own interest. It is, as I said, it is fear and your self-interest. So till the time they have interest in Afghanistan, they will make a lot of efforts. Yes, Pakistan now can have a finesse. They can maneuver their political and diplomatic maneuver can rope in President Trump as far as wish to become the peace. I mean, for the Nobel Peace Prize, maybe, and maybe the way he wants to portray himself and he wants to achieve that. And Pakistan is praising him again and again. So he may be roped in to address Pakistani's issues, maybe in this region. And maybe I have a feeling that President Trump will use Pakistani leverage as far as U.S.-China relations are concerned. I think this is a natural bridge available to them. And there is a lot been discussed. There must have a lot been discussed in the meeting with the Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif, in the meeting with the Field Marshal Asim, and that must be regarding their application in this region. And I'm pretty sure that Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif, our political leadership and our military leadership must have worked a lot to protect the national interest of Pakistan. No compromise on our strategic friendship with China, no compromise on our response to India without compromising on these. This I can assure I have certain information also. This I can very positively assure Pakistani nation that no Pakistani political leadership, no Pakistani military leadership can compromise on the interest of Pakistan, which includes Kashmir, which includes our waters, which include our sovereignty, our border geography, and our nuclear. So that's the positive silver lining I'm seeing across, and probably because of our now the other development which has taken place, that is Saudi deal, this defense deal. Probably I have a feeling that this might help in improving our relationship with India as well. So there are a lot of silver linings, and credit goes to our political and military diplomacy, which has really brought very good fruits for Pakistan.
Mr. Pitafi, one last question. Please go ahead if you've got any.
Yeah, regarding Indus Waters Treaty, sir, we keep on seeing that India is not only weaponizing it, violating it, but we saw that there were recent floods. Do you think that at this moment, with Pakistan's current vantage point, where Pakistan is connecting with so many countries, Pakistan can have some kind of intervention from the world regarding Indus Waters Treaty?
You see, it depends upon those countries and their bilateral relationship with India. Yes, that's why, as far as Saudi Arabia is concerned, or maybe a few other Middle Eastern countries who might join this strategic defense pact with Pakistan, they might help Pakistan in reducing these tensions with India. But Pakistan must use the international forums who have been giving guarantees in these deals. Otherwise, this rule-based society is under challenge. Today, this world is being ruled by in most of the countries which are really impacting the strategic milieu of the world. In the world. So they're impacting the decision making, and most of those personalities have a lot of extremist thoughts. People like Modi, Netanyahu, Putin is a leader in itself. They have a different character. Trump has own character. So a lot of different leadership present. So Pakistan must have this superior diplomatic and political maneuver to bring in the organizations, the World Bank, the peace mitigating organizations, create small and big alliances, regional alliances as well as international alliances, and especially with those countries who are the lower riparians, who in the future who are being threatened by these waters. There are other countries also which have so we can create a kind of a coalition and talk about it more and more. So a lot of debate, these things are bring into the international debate that we have to continuously, we have to work. And then we might have some support. Otherwise, I'm not foreseeing any direct pressure on India by anyone as far as our international
Right.
water treaty is concerned.
Right, Major General retired Zahid Mahmood, senior analyst, thank you very much for taking time out for this particular live transmission at Pakistan TV. I would really appreciate that. Mr. Pitafi, your closing comments.
Yeah, General Saab just said something very interesting, that Pakistan is praising President Trump a lot and repeatedly. I think from my point of view, there's nothing not to praise for, right? Because that man has repeatedly shown that he's a friend of Pakistan. And by the way, there's something that that happened yesterday. We should be celebrating that. That TikTok deal that actually materialized brings two of our closest allies together, and they are not decoupling. So that is a great news also. When I was in China recently, I said one thing, that on May 10th, because we are working together and China and Pakistan were depending on each other, when it comes to warfare as well, there is a word in South Asia. It is called Shubh Ghadi. Shubh Ghadi is opportune moment or lucky moment. When China and Pakistan came together, it was a Shubh Ghadi. Now I'm going to say there are three Shubh Ghadis that we have to remember. Our relationship with America when it started, with China, with Saudi Arabia, and in Pakistan's political context, Prime Minister of Pakistan has just proven, and the Army Chief also, that it was a Shubh Ghadi when both of these actually came to power.
Right, very aptly put. Mr. FARUKH Pitafi, senior analyst, joining us for this special live transmission. Thank you very much for taking time out. By looking at whatever the engagements of Prime Minister and his high-level delegation during this high-level debate at the United Nations General Assembly, reveal a number of facts that Pakistan's position among the Committee of Nations at this particular point in time is pretty prominent, and its role and influence as far as multiple pressing problems the world, the region, different regions of the world are actually confronted with is very prominent. And at the same time, Pakistan's relationship with the United States of America is rapidly warming up, and it is also expected, and as per Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Shehbaz Sharif, that this particular relationship is going to further strengthen under the leadership of President Donald Trump. With that note, we come to the end of this special live transmission at Pakistan TV. I'm JAWAD signing off.